To my dear students. Without much introduction, may I present my paper. Shall I present my screen now, sir?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
India screen. Is it audible, sir? Can you see?
Yes, madam, you are audible and visible. Audible and visible, madam.
Thank you. Advaita and the present day scenario. That is my title of the paper. Advaita Vedanta philosophy is one of the versatile philosophic disciplines ever originated, the relevance of which transcends all limitations of time, space, and situation. It is because of the very same nature that it assumes a panacea for all existing diversities, caste, creed, and culture. Its magic power can unite all the people irrespective of caste, creed, culture, and society. Current position of the society. Here in this earth, all are fighting only for his safe existence. Whether in financial, cultural, and moral, he only considers his welfare. In acquiring this, he tries to disturb the others for his own existence. This tendency should be annihilated at any cost. Attitude of every person. We are all expecting for a safer life in our residing place. In such a globalized and technologically sound world, it is not possible unless we generate the feeling of tolerance among ourselves. Hence, it is the need of the hour to teach the philosophical ideas to the common people. Historical teaching. When we look into the history of our nation, we can see in certain crucial situations, prophets were evolved and pronounced the philosophy of Advaita in accordance with the then present situation and rescued our nation from the grip of communalism, fanaticism, etc. This matter is that the core teaching of Advaita remains unshaken and the subsidiaries changed according to the then present social situation. Our attitude towards the comforts. We should discriminate the evil and good elements in enjoying the technological devices. Unless and otherwise, the so-called achievements will become fruitless. More than that, they will become our destroyers too. Two types of scholars are there. Those who believe that everything in this world is there in the Vedas and in the Upanishads. There is nothing relevant to this age is there in the Upanishads, for they have been written centuries back. So it is mere foolishness to believe that there is something relevant to the modern world in the Upanishads. The aim of my paper, to put forth certain remedies which were revealed by our elders for certain social malice. The characteristics of the Upanishads. Upanishads are the luminous stars glittering in the sky of Sanskrit horizon of literature. It will definitely remain there as the light showing the path of the people who believe in the wisdom of the Upanishads. Even though the Upanishads have been originated generations back, the relevance of which stands beyond our expectations. It is only because the panacea which was proposed by our sages for the smooth living of a generation having multifaceted social situations transcends any limits. The philosophy of the Upanishads are arranged in such a manner as which can be interpreted as one wish, that is flexible with whatever shape that one wishes to give. The core will remain as such without changing an inch, and at the same time, its accessories are flexible like rubber. What is our task? The only thing that we have to do is nothing but to interpret the same in tune with the then present social situation. That has been doing from the time immemorial and will be doing till the end of human race. What the Neo-Vedantins do, they are interpreting the same in such a manner as which could address this then present social situation. Main tenets of Advaita philosophy. It is my liability to say the same because only with this I could explain the remedies. From where the origin, sustenance, and destruction of the universe happen is Brahman. The same thing is explained in the second Brahma Sutra, Janmadhyasya Yata. Brahman alone is the sole real thing, and all the rest are nothing but mithya. The Brahman is named as Ishvara, Sat, Ananda, Prana, Amaraha, Aksharam, Yonihi, Akashaha, Paramatma, etc. in the Upanishadic verses. This is the source of all the Shastras like the Rigveda and the like. The very same idea is explained in the third sutra, Brahma Sutra, that is Shastra Yonitva. As we could understand all the clay-made things like pot, jar, etc. in essence as clay only by knowing Brahman, we could understand all the Brahman-born things are nothing but Brahman only. There is no difference between the individual soul and the Supreme Soul. The Supreme Soul is Nityaha, Avikari, Anandakhanaha, Sarvajnaha, Sarvavyapi, and Shuddha. Hence, there is no difference between the individual soul and the Supreme Soul. All these qualities can be attributed to this individual souls too. The cause of the pain-stricken universe is nothing but the false notion created by ignorance. This will not be extinguished by anything other than knowledge of the self. There is no need of any action or karma for a jnani. The material as well as the efficient cause of the universe smeared with sorrows is nothing but the Supreme Soul. This false notion of the universe is created by ignorance, which is cleared up by self-knowledge. Through hearing, Shravana, logical appreciations, manana, and deep contemplation, nididhyasana, one can realize the Supreme Soul. Atma va are drashtavyaha, shodavyo mandavyo nididhyasidavyaha. One who knows Brahman will become Brahman. Brahmaveda, Brahmaiva bhavati. Actually, all of us are the ever-liberated Supreme Soul. But due to ignorance, we fail to realize our real nature. Through rigorous contemplation and vairagya, we can get rid of this ignorance, and then the self-knowledge originated in our inner self. Then naturally the notion of I am Brahman evolves. His bondage of the universe will be removed. For all these realizations, the Vedas and the realized souls self-experience are pramanas. Shruti, Yukti and Anubhava are pramanas. The key instruction of the Upanishads is nothing but Egatva Darshana, that is seeing oneness in the whole thing. In essence, all the living and non-living things are nothing but the Supreme Soul. It is also known as unanimity in multiplicity or unity in diversity, Nanatve Egatvam. The very same thing is illustrated in the Chandogya Upanishad, Sadeva Somedam Agra Asi Degameva Advidiyam. That is, this seeing world is nothing but one and only Sat, and goes on like this, Seyam Devada Ikshada, Handa Ahamimam Stisro Devataha, Anena Jivena Atmana Anupravishya, Namarupe Vyagaravani. That goddess imagined these three goddesses may enter into the bodies and make name and form. Major problems. First, poverty. John Lale Gillin explains poverty as that condition in which a person, either because of inadequate income or unwise expenditure, does not maintain scale of living high enough to provide for his physical and mental efficiency and to enable him and his natural dependents to function usually according to the standards of society of which he is a member. That remedy, it is said in the Ishavasya Upanishad, it is begin with like this, Ishavasyam idam sarvam yat kinja jagatyam jagat tena tektena bhunjidhaha magritha kasya svidhanam. What one has to do, the whole world is nothing but the abode of Isha, and we should live by giving, and we should not steal the wealth of others. In this earth, there is as much of natural resources which is sufficient or adequate for all the living creatures who dwell here. But unfortunately, the wealth of this earth is not equally distributed among the inhabitants. These facts make the less given people feel jealous towards the others. There arises contest, etc. So the people of the same earth, born in equal right to enjoy the resources, we should be generous in nature. Unemployment. The crisis in Indian society is largely a crisis of finding suitable job for the million who join institutions aimlessly and come out of them only to suffer frustration outside and become deviant. The reading of the Upanishadic teaching. Self-confidence, potency, and courage are the three pillars erected by the Upanishads, which are three indispensable things for a successful life in the present world ambience. The self is the basic factor of all the potency of every creature, and the same is the soul innate in each individual. This very knowledge creates self-confidence and strength in us. Upanishad itself says that Nayamatma Balahinena Lebhyaha Mundaga. That is, the soul is not acquired by the weak one, and means those who realize the soul will be beyond doubt being sturdy. Sharavat Tanmayo Bhaved, Mundagopanishad explains, the secret for a successful life in this earth, people should have certain targets in their lives. Those also should be like that of arrows. As all of us aware of the fact that without a proper end or intention in our life, we cannot succeed. That is, an aimful life meet with success, not other. Deyam Shraddhaya Deyam, Taittiriya Upanishad. In Taittiriya, there is a passage saying to whom we should give our money. We can see certain people in our day-to-day life that they used to exhaust their money for luxuries. On the other hand, they will not give a penny to the needy. We should give our money only to the needy. Excess money in our custody is that much of harm as too much of water in a boat. Both are harmful. Therefore, it is the duty of us to find out the needy people to give off our excess money. Swadhyayat ma pramadaha. Taittiriya says, we should not stop our studies. Until the last breath, we should continue our studies. We are advised to prolong with our studies because there are so many things in this earth for us to study. As much as we continue our studies, we should definitely come to understand that there are so many things in this earth to be studied. We have to take births after births for studying even a single subject. There is a saying in Tamil, கற்றது கையளவு கற்காதது மலையளவு. Satyana Pramadidavyam. Taittiriya itself says, in whatever grave situation we may be placed, we should not give up the path of truth. In our day-to-day life, there may arise so many occasions for us to struggle with the ideologies we used to stick on and the usual activities. Usually, 90% of the people used to give up all their ideologies for the sake of mere benefits. They usually think that if I can say a small lie, I will be benefited a lot. Actually, the fact is that today a small lie, tomorrow a somewhat better lie, day after tomorrow a grave lie. However, there is a matter which we should never forget. Only truth will gain at last. There is no doubt in it. Mundaga says, Satyameva Jayate. Madhrudevo Bhava, Pidrudevo Bhava, Acharya Devo Bhava, Aditi Devo Bhava. Taittiriya itself says, in our family, in our society, in our nation, in our world, we should give due respect to the elders, for they are having so much of life experience. Whenever we are forced to face a grave situation in our life, we are advised by our elders to go through the path through which the great people had gone. Mahajana Yenagata Sapandha. We should give due respect to our mother and father who are responsible for our arrival in this earth. Preceptors are those who are going to make us release from this toil of birth and death. Hence, they are also fit to be worshipped. Here by the word Acharya, not only the preceptors are mentioned, but also the elders too. Ancient sages are always famous for their respect towards the guests. This is the very same idea behind India's frequent attacks from the foreigners. There is no other country like India which had tasted the attack of the foreigners this much. Crime. Crime or delinquency is a great social problem facing every society. Crime can be regarded as behavior of individuals which the group strongly disapproves. And since societies do not have uniform standards of right and wrong, these standards change in a society from time to time. Criminal behavior is relative and not absolute. Actually, crime is the price paid for the advantages of civilization. As such as civilized as we grow, so much types of crimes also grow simultaneously. Remedy. The cause of all kinds of atrocities is the feeling of oneself as different from the other. Actually, in essence, there is no such thing as duality. The Upanishad says, Didiyadvai bhayam bhavati, Brihadaranyaka. That is, fear arises when one sees the second. We feel fear from the second. Here, fear is only an uvalakshana of all the feelings like love, hatred, jealousy, etc. If we can see the others as our own self, there will not be any such feeling. What a graceful idea that our ancient sages put forth in front of us. Our ancient sages were fully aware of the fact that in future ages, that comfortable and fruitful living in this world will not be possible in a fully developed age when the whole world will become a village. The secular belief of seeing one's own essence in all living creatures would be the only one remedy for a globalized society. They have foreseen the truth. Ko mohaha ka shokaha yegatvam anupashyataha. Ishavasya Upanishad. Seeing one as existing apart from the whole, perceiving the totality of nature as separate from oneself is what is known as ignorance or ajnana. This ignorance leads one to visualize events in life as problem creating. One solution alone exists for such problem, bringing out the light of wisdom or jnana, which in essence is nothing but perceiving oneself as inseparably one with the whole. Perceiving that what is real in the whole is what underlies the being of oneself. If one can see himself as residing in all the living creatures, there will be no sorrow and no delusion. Advaitins, especially the Neo-Vedantins, have taken the very same idea from the context and popularized the same for the well-being of the society. Yasmin sarvani bhudani atmaiva bhud vijanataha tatra kamohaha kashokaha egatvam anupashyataha. The Upanishads illustrate how we should live in this world and thereby lead a successful life. According to the philosophy, all are nothing but the product of nature. Here, nobody or nothing is superior or inferior to anybody or anything. Each one has his own individuality and capacity. Action takes place everywhere in nature in accordance with the modalities one deluded by the same things. I am the doer of the karma. Actually, we are following the rules of Prakriti. War. The problem of war constitutes probably the most serious threat to the society today. There are two main classes of theory, economic and psychological. The former sees the cause of war in the class of economic interest, the latter in the nature of man. These are due to the desire for power and glory, the identification of the individual with the prestige of his group, the sense of insecurity in modern economic life. Dispute begins in small countries for natural resources like water, wealth, hidden wealth like gold, petrol, oil, etc. The earth where we are living is equipped with all requirements which are sufficient to all of us. But unfortunately, we recklessly exhaust the wealth for unwanted things. We are spoiling the land. The wealth of the land is not equally divided among the inhabitants. This creates jealousy among nations, like individuals feel jealousy on others. Each nation feels jealousy on the other nation. Solution. Amritatvasya nashasti vittena iti. In the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, it is stated that one cannot procure the highest goal of life through wealth. In the Kadhopanishad also, there is a passage, Na vittena tarpaniyo manushyaha. One cannot be pleased by wealth. Actually, we cannot propitiate a man by giving him wealth. In spite of all the wealth one attains, he will be seen as unsatisfied. Whatever wealth or anything one achieve, he will be unsatisfied by what he does not achieve. That is the way of human life. We cannot change this mentality of the people here. One cannot attain the highest goal by the mere acquisition of wealth. By showing this, the Upanishad tries to keep man away from the grip of wealth and heaves him to the quest for knowledge. Appreciation towards the West. Today we are going through such a globalized social situation that only a fingertip is needed to bring all the world's objects to our friend. It is foolish to say that everything that is to be gained as net profits, within quotes, is worthy or not worthy. 60% of those materials having nothing to do with the ordinary man. We should not forget the fact that having given up all those net profits, the Europeans came here for getting some relief from those burning problems. They are adopting Indian culture and value system. Not only that, having given up the so-called medical learnings, they are here for getting total awareness of our traditional Ayurvedic medical practices. Remedy. The lifestyle of a country depends on the geographical and cultural background of a country. It cannot be easily changed or being copied from any other country. We Indians have a peculiar geography and culture, and we had imbibed such a lifestyle that suits us. In India, we are having multicultural, multi-language speaking and multi-religious people who live harmoniously. So it is natural that we owe such a unique culture that can hold together all the diverse cultures. Whereas the case of the Europeans is different. There is no diversity. So naturally, their culture will not give place to any other people. How can we copy such a culture? India's culture is seeing unity in all the diversities, and this can be imbibed by any country. Our belief, this is the belief of our nature, that each individual is supposed to take birth in a country on the deeds which he had done in prior births. One cannot escape from the fruit of past birth, which is predetermined. So it is the fixed fact that irrespective of caste, creed, or sex, the birth of an individual is predetermined and no one is scared of it. What we can do is to be vigilant, not to do any harm to anyone, so that unwanted births can be avoided. Technological height. One may wonder that in what sense I had expressed this as a problem. Actually speaking, this should not be a problem. As all advantages have two sides, this also has two sides. That is, annihilative and destructive or constructive sides. This is the only philosophy, as I had already expressed, as that can hold together all the people irrespective of any distinction. The sages who had concentrated their minds inside and had found a remedy for all the evils happening in this world and realized the truth that no one or nothing is unwanted or out of use on this earth. Remedy. Kathopanishad says, Kaschid dhiraha pratyagatmanam aichat avarta chakshuhu amrdatva vichan. But a brave person wishing for immortality beholds the inner self with his eyes closed. This shows the fact that one cannot find contentment or eternal happiness from the outward objects, and hence the sages made their eyes inward and found the essence of one's own being and felt contentment. We feel animosity towards the other only because we fail to feel the same soul as their essence. This feeling, once created, will be capable of annihilating all animosities which an individual feels on others. If there is no animosity prevailing among people, there will not be any chance of scrupulous actions like harming the fellow beings who is in essence his own very self. Thus, all the so-called scientific discoveries will be only utilized for the benefit of the whole humanity, and only the constructive side will be utilized. For this will be the panacea for the scientific height. Scrupulous in facing fatal situation. Incapable of facing a blow of fate, they commit blunders. If we open a newspaper, we will be bewildered on seeing the blunder of certain people in facing some situations. Unable to solve a financial problem, they commit suicide. Not only that, they kill themselves, but their wives and kids and kins too. What a horrible situation. Who had given them the right to take away the lives of the others? We people wrongly attribute the happiness, sorrow, etc. of the mind, intellect, body to the self and feel those silly things as the essential nature of the self. Actually, the Atman is far away from all these silly feelings. It is the source place of happiness, consciousness, and eternity. As everyone knows that in spite of all the material belongings, we feel only our possession of the self as the supreme one that we have. Remedy. Brihadaranyaka says this. Nava are patihu kamaya padi priyo bhavadi atmanastu kamaya sarvam priyam bhavadi. That is, the husband is loved not because of him but because of her. For everyone, one's self is pivotal, not anything else. We feel our own self as the supreme one and the very essence of our mundane existence. So actually speaking, the unhappiness, etc. will not touch this, our soul, which is the source place of happiness only. The very same idea is well pictured in the Adhyasa Bhashya by Adi Shankara in his introduction to Brahma Sutra commentary. So it is foolish to kill anybody or on one's own self for our grievance on the self. These kinds of feelings are not of the self, but the known self, and these feelings are erroneously attributed on the self, which has nothing to do with the self. Superiority and inferiority complex. We will come across in this society two types of people, namely people having superiority and inferiority complexes. This is a kind of feeling that will not at all going to benefit us. First of all, we should realize our capacities and drawbacks. Actually, these are all purposefully created by nature for natural equilibrium. Nothing on this earth is created as of no use. Each creation is finite in itself. Nobody and nothing can be substituted with somebody or something. Each creation is unique. Nature has created every object useful only. Each thing has its purpose and its place in the functioning of the whole universe. Remedy. Evam pravartidam chakram nanuvartayadi yaha akhayur indriyaramo moham parthasa jivadi. It is from Bhagavad Gita. He who does not follow the wheel thus set in motion, but takes delight in the senses, he lives in vain, O Arjuna. We are never supposed to sit idle and think like that. I am nobody in this world, nobody cares me, I am deserted, etc. Each one has to contribute his part in the sustenance of the universe. If anyone thinks that he is neglected, he is a fool. For nobody is ever neglected on this earth. Even a grass is finite in itself. So we should create some kind of self-confidence in this earth in knowing the fact that we are all finite in ourselves. Conclusion. The philosophy of Advaita has the capacity to address all these major problems, and there are clear remedies to all these so-called problems. I have only pointed out major problems for the sake of brevity. These are not only the problems of a nation like India, these are all also can be charted as the problems of any country. For the goodwill of the whole humanity, we should be more empathetic in our behavior towards the other, who is in essence ourselves. Where diversity is felt, there the feeling of hatred is also originated. On the contrary, if we can see the other as ourselves, there will not be any chance of feeling of hatred. So for creating universal brotherhood among nations, the Advaitic vision has a great deal to contribute. As the description of Shatabadha Brahmana, by helping each other, we can live happily in this world. We are having such a philosophical background that proclaims universal brotherhood. This is the perennial contribution of Advaita Vedanta. Thank you very much.
Congratulations, Professor Pannir Selvam, sir. How are you? Congratulations, Professor Chandrika Madam from Tirupati. Professor Chinnaya is speaking.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Professor Chinnaya.
How are you, sir?
Fine. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you spoken very nicely. Congratulations. Very good.
Thank you,
very
sir.
good. Madam also spoken very nicely. This is a pleasant one. Huh? So thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, Professor Chinaya.
Yes, sir.
How are you?
Fine, sir. Fine, sir. Very
Please,
good.
Please go up your place, please.
Very good, sir.
Thank you.
So you have presented very good. Madam also presented Chandrika Madam about Vedanta, so Upanishads and many things. So both the speakers, congratulations to Professor Paneerselvam sir and Professor Chandrika Madam. All the best. This is a very nice meeting. We enjoyed a lot. You have presented about Vedanta very nicely, very good points I understood. It is a very inspiring one. If you share this type of thing, we may get some energy. So thank you, sir. Thank you.
Hello.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, sir. Thanks so much, Madam Professor Chandrika Madam, for your excellent presentation on Advaita and the present day scenario. Madam, you have very well reflected upon how Advaita and Upanishad messages are related to life experiences and to solve the present day problems. And you have also reflected that to inculcate the value of self-confidence, fearlessness, and other human values that is in every moment of life, because the same reality lies in every life experience, and it can help us to overcome all kinds of unhappiness, insecurities, greed, limitations, fear, and all kinds of health, environmental, and technological hazards. That is and from all kinds of evil. Thanks so much, Madam, for your reflective talk. Now, I call upon my friend, Professor Dr. K. Omnar Rao, to moderate the interactive session. Over to Professor Dr. K. Omnar Rao.
Professor Paneerselvam sir and Professor Chandrika Madam for their very nice lectures. At first, I would like to thank Professor Paneerselvam sir for his very technical, thought-provoking and forward-looking presentation. In a sense, he has tried to apply the logical analytic method to understand Advaita Vedanta, and he sees late Professor Ganeshwar Mishra as a trendsetter in applying the analytic philosophy. Rather, he sees analytic philosophy very much there in the understanding of Sankara's philosophy. Because when, as I could know, I don't know how much I'm right, when he was in the West, he said that Indian philosophy is speculative. In order to refute that, he said no. As far as the logical foundation in Advaita is concerned, it is very strong. There is no speculative element. It is very strong, and there is the analytic trend is very much contained in the Advaitic trend. So that's how Professor Paneerselvam has tried to bring out that point, and making a reference to other professors, say Professor R.K. Puligentla and Matilal, Professor Jishi Naik, Professor Ganesh Prasad Das sir, who is also there with us. So they have made enough contributions to apply the analytic trend in understanding of Advaita. So very much thankful to you, sir. Actually, we have forgotten this, and you have reminded us again, so that we can have more and more research on this and to keep this trend alive in Odisha, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for your paper, sir. I also thank Professor Chandrika Madam for seeing the Advaita in the present day scenario. And she sees, despite various dissensions, differentiations, she feels that it is Advaita alone that can bring in a thread of unity among all. They can see unity, a sort of unity in one and all, and it is the solution that Advaita can offer. So I thank both the professors. Now I request the distinguished participants to comment on or to make observations or have their queries on both the presentations. Well, I see Professor Ganesh sir is well. I request Professor Ranjit Ghosh sir. Well, he's there with us. At first, I would like to call Professor Ranjit Ghosh, sir, if he has anything to say, any observation to make, because I don't see any question in the chat box. If or anybody who wants to make any observation or if he has any question on the subject, they are welcome. Well, Ranjit Ghosh sir has put on his microphone. Well, welcome, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Rao. One question is coming to my mind. If the spirit of Vedanta is metaphysical and axiological, then is it really necessary to have the language analysis, which is an epistemological one, in the field of Vedanta? Because you see, the Vedanta is to be understood as a part of the Prasthanatrayi, and in all these three Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita and Vedanta together, we get all the valuational and metaphysical issues. And therefore, if we try to analyze these concepts, well, Professor Pannirsselvam has referred to the galaxies of the analytic thinkers, some of whom are my teachers, and also we participated in different seminars on different occasions. But when Professor Motilal came in one of the seminar of Professor Dayakrishna in Jaipur, they were discussing, it is 40 years back. So Dayaji wrote an article that Vedanta, does it mean anything? So at all, does it mean anything at all? So the thing is, the transcendental aspect and the valuational and metaphysical aspects are very much important. And in this regard, I would rather say that Professor Chandrika has referred to these aspects, that how Vedanta can shape our life, how the shape of things to come with the help of Vedanta. So, sir, if you have anything to enlighten us, please say. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Rajesh Ghosh, for your very nice observation. Now, let me try to answer you. Now, no doubt, Vedanta or any system of philosophy in India talk about the axiological and the metaphysical truths, no doubt about that. But at the same time, there is also the need or necessity to see the Indian philosophical tradition, especially Advaita, from other aspects also. Now, this was a need of the hour. In fact, Professor Ganeshan Mishra, after his training from the foreign universities, he thought that there is something new in this Western methodology. So he has tried to see Advaita or any system of thought from a new perspective. Now, this perspective is very much essential for various reasons. One reason which I would like to give here is that the contemporary Indian philosophy, the contemporary Indian philosophers have been severely criticized that Indian philosophy, especially the contemporary Indian philosophy, lacks any new methodology, and there was a lot of criticisms that they were nothing to offer something new and all that one. So there was a need of the hour for our philosophers to show that this is one way of understanding contemporary Indian philosophy, or applying the Western tools that are very much available, and try to apply our ancient system and try to show that our systems, we have the methodology of the Western thinkers like Wittgenstein or Husserl or phenomenology. Now, the question you may ask is why we should use Western methodology or Western understanding. Now, I feel this is very much essential, as Professor Mohanty would say, that the Indian philosophers must read Western philosophy, and also vice versa. See, this means in order to enrich our own tradition, right, some methodologies from the West we can borrow and apply. That's why we are able to show that the method of analysis is not something new to us. The phenomenology, the so-called phenomenological method established by Brentano, Husserl, and Heidegger and others are also very much could be seen in the context of Vedanta, and also the hermeneutical method, because in the 20th century, as you know, that these are the three important methods which are very much familiar and which are very dominating in the West. So this is a high time for us to go back to our tradition and see how our ancient systems also had these methodologies. So it means that there are different ways of looking at Indian philosophy. The metaphysical truth is something very important, no doubt. But here is a method which also can equate us with the Western tradition. This is one reason why I think that this methodology like the analysis or phenomenological understanding or hermeneutical are very much essential to apply that. And moreover, I would say that, but I would like to see the whole thing from a different perspective. I feel I am fully in support of Ganesha Mishra ji, because I feel that Shankara has made an attempt to show that it is not mere metaphysics, or it is not something very much related to metaphysics only, but it has got a linguistic analysis. Now, if you read this book, I humbly request you to go through these two books of Ganesha Mishra, which will change your perspective. That's why I always say that the Oriya tradition has contributed something novel. When the first time, I'll take 2 or 3 minutes to explain to you. Because when I first attended a conference in Utkal University, when I was a student of Christian College, I was amazed the way in which philosophers have been analyzing. Professor Ganesha Mishra I could not see, but I saw K.P. Mishra and many others, G.G. Nayak ji and others. It's a very beautiful way of understanding. I never thought that Indian philosophy could be seen from this perspective. This is something very amazing. It's something new. So why can't we try this method and take Professor G.P. Das method in Vedanta Paribhasha? This is in fact, for a very long time, I was using his book and I was teaching this to some of our students, and somehow I lost the book. I don't know whether he has got some copy or I would like to buy a copy, because these methods there are different ways of looking at Indian philosophy. What I'm humbly pointing out here is that don't subscribe to one method of doing Indian philosophy. Why do you think that metaphysics is the only way of, or axiological way of doing Indian philosophy? Right, there are other perspectives. Why can't you look at that? That will broaden your vision of Indian philosophy. That's why I am fond of these methods, whether it is Puligandla or Matilal or Mohanty. All these methods are something remarkable. So this is what
congratulations, Pannir Selvam sir. Congratulations for your beautiful answer. Very nice answer you have given. I am asking one question to Professor Chandrika Madam. In this connection, Madam, congratulations for your beautiful talk. I am asking one question, share something. What are the important quotes we find in the Upanishad for the promotion of world peace? Tell me some important quotations or sentences which contribute for individual peace and world peace. Share something about some important sentences relating with world peace in Upanishads. Share something, Madam.
Thank you, sir. I have already shared the certain things.
Tell me some important quotations, very, very powerful sentences, just like a Mahavakyas. Know yourself, die yourself. Understanding about yourself is understanding the world. Like this, any important quotations or sentences you found in Upanishads, any Upanishad relating with individual transformation, individual peace or world peace. Say some important, powerful sentences in Upanishads.
Etaratosi sarvam atmeva bhutat kena kam pashyet kena kam vijaniyat तत्र कमोहः कक् शोकः एकत्वमनुपश्यतः सर्वे सन्तु सुखिनः. It is not from Upanishads, it is only from Mahabharata. तत्र कमोहः, there are so many यत्र सर्वम् एकनीडं. We can say so many things, so many quotations.
Not necessary, madam.
Anyway, thank you, madam. Anyway,
not necessary to post the quotes and the important sentences. It is not necessary.
Thank you for your nice. Also, thank you for presiding professor. Also, thank you. Nice meeting. You have given very nicely. We enjoyed your program. I am appreciating the presiding professor also. Panir Selvam also. Thank you very much. So we enjoyed your beautiful presence and talks. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, madam. And so, Professor Panir Selvam, sir, as he says, the so-called, let's say, the modern trends that we see in the Western world that are already there, and we should search in Indian philosophical tradition. So that's the great message that we have from him. Thank you very much, sir. We need to. But the things that are being done, say, made the phenomenology, made the trend of analysis or existentialism, that is already contained in the Indian text, and we have to go through and we have to find them, and we have to prove that these things, the trends that are suggested to be new, that are already there in the Indian tradition and Indian philosophy. Thank you so much, sir, for setting the path and showing us the way. Thank you so much, sir. Well, we have with us Professor. Ganesh sir was there, and he probably some network issue. Well, I request our admin, Professor Pramod Kumar Das, to reflect on the talks, both the talks. Professor Pramod Kumar Das, our admin and host, I request him. Srinivasan sir wants to say something.
Yeah, I just want to ask one small question.
Welcome, sir.
Though I am just standing like a lamb in front of a lion and a lioness, I'm not able to question them because they are all highly, qualified intellectuals, and I am not competent enough to ask them questions. It is only a clarification. It's a clarification that both of them can answer, but otherwise, Professor Chandrika Madam can also answer. How is it that among all the individuals of this world, because you are speaking about the social harmony through scriptures and Upanishads, right?
Yes.
Of all the individuals of this world, only some rare ones have such a desire and others do not. What is the reason for this? Even within our own family, we don't find that kind of harmony. What is the reason for this?
Answer is there in my speech itself, sir. It might be our births, prior births, and then benefit. That means it may be caused by our prior births, emotions or something like that. You are not. We
are the meritorious deeds of the past.
Yeah.
I am wondering. Anyway, thank you very much for your nice presentation, please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. You are.
Sir, Professor Panir Selvam, sir, I have nothing to answer in front of a great lion who gave us a beautiful picture about the Advaita Vedanta philosophy. So I am just, because I am focusing my attention only on Sankhya and Yoga philosophy, though I know about the Mahavakya said, Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya Jivo Brahmaiva Napara. That's all in Advaita philosophy, but not otherwise. I am here to learn. I am only a novice in this field. Anyway, thank you very much for your comprehensive coverage of the philosophical
Thank you, Srinivasan, sir. Thank you, Srinivasan.
Now, well, I request...
Dr. Rao, one
yes,
sentence.
Sir, welcome, sir.
And on another occasion, few days back, Professor Panir Selvam, I have asked this question that Brahmavid Brahmaiva Bhavati. So this Eva is metaphysical or epistemological? So, sir, at that time you told me that it is metaphysical. Now, on the whole, what I feel that the primacy of the metaphysical and axiological cannot override this epistemological and analytic issues. the Professor Misra, and they were all. I am also a pass out of Utkal University. I am coming out of that tradition. But the analysis at the end. So what Vedanta should suggest, it is a metaphysics or axiology rather than an epistemology and analysis. This is my personal view, of course. Somebody may differ. So on that occasion, you told me that Eva is metaphysical. That it came to my mind. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ranjit ji. Of course, in our previous discussion, I said Eva is metaphysical. Now, you see, I want to retain the both metaphysical and epistemological. Now, I would say the entire discourse on the Indian philosophical tradition support both metaphysical and epistemology. Of course, the main purpose of Indian philosophical tradition is to speak about the metaphysical truths. No doubt about that. I don't question that. But you should also remember the fact that in order to claim the metaphysical truths, our Indian philosophical tradition use the pramanas, epistemology. That cannot be neglected. Without epistemology, metaphysics will collapse. See, I want to quote a Western thinker you might be knowing, H.G. Wells, who wrote a book, Metaphysics, wherein he said, there is nothing wrong in talking about metaphysics. If philosophers are not going to talk about metaphysics, what else they are going to do? But, he says, it all depends on whether you are having a good metaphysics or bad metaphysics. What does he mean by this? He says, a good metaphysician is one who uses a proper argument in support of his metaphysical claim. Whereas a bad metaphysician cannot offer good arguments for his metaphysical claim. But in Indian tradition, both metaphysics and epistemology are important. Our purpose is to talk about metaphysical truths because we are talking about the supersensuous reality. The concept Eva actually talks about the metaphysical realm only. The entire discourse is like that. But I am giving you, by following the footpath of great thinker like Ganesh Mishra, there is also another way of looking at Indian philosophy. The same Vedanta, you can see from this perspective. Then what is the advantage? If you look at Advaita from the analytical tradition, something new is emerging. Why can't we take it? And further, I want to add this point also. Some may not agree with me. Now, if we read any textbook on Indian philosophy, all of them have stopped with Madhva. They don't go beyond that. As though philosophy has ended with Madhva. It is not. But why? Because we have been all the time talking about the metaphysical truths or the metaphysical claims. But there are epistemological literature very much available in the Indian philosophical tradition. For example, Sri Harsha's Khandana Khandanakar. You take a beautiful analysis given by Gangesa. So all these are not given proper importance. They have been neglected. Why? Because metaphysics has become a dominating feature. I am not saying that it is wrong, but there are also other areas which we have to probe into. Something new will emerge. I give one example. I always give this example. When 1963, when Gettier, you must be knowing, Edmund Gettier, when he wrote a 3-page article, his knowledge, a true belief, his true belief knowledge, that is a question he raises. Now that 2.5-page article, not even 3-page, that could make a revolution in contemporary epistemology. But if you read Gangesa, you see similar problems are raised and has been answered by Gangesa. But in the West, still they are searching. Still they are not able to solve the problem. So there is also another way of looking at Indian philosophy. Please try to understand that Indian philosophy as a whole has to be read in the sense that this is my personal view, don't concentrate simply on metaphysical truths. They are very important, but see the logical or the analytical skill which is very much present. The same method I would also apply to the phenomenology. Hermeneutics, for example, when it came as a very beautiful movement in the West in the 19th and 20th century, everybody appreciated. But ask those people to come to Indian side and look at our acharyas, great acharyas like Shankara, Ramanujan, Madhva, who have interpreted, who gave their commentaries to this Prasthanatraya. So this is not, this has been neglected. So I want to discuss with you, I wanted to show that the analysis is not something purely the property of the West. So analysis is not alien to Indian philosophy. That is my basic aim in claiming that there is also another way of looking at Indian philosophy. Not that I am claiming that my method is something supreme, but I am just inviting your kind attention that look at Indian philosophy from this perspective so that something new is emerging. This is the influence I got from these great thinkers like Ganesha Mishra. Now, you see one thing, traditional Advaitins may not accept that. That's why I said in the beginning, when my teacher gave the book to me, he said, don't read it, because he thought I would be influenced by it. But I was very much influenced by it. Till now, I don't find any other book like the book of Ganesha Mishra, which it will give you a new way of understanding Advaita or Indian philosophy in general. That is why I am applying this method.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Selvam. I do follow and I strongly affirm your view, and because even in unfurling Brahman, the technique that we adopt, neti, not this, actually it is logical. It is actually based on the linguistic analysis.
Correct.
So we use this, but we forget that the method of analysis has been, we neglect that. What is this method? This is purely an analytical method. It is a logical, linguistic, analytic method. So very much there, sir, and we need to do research on this area, and I think we should follow your footprints and go ahead with this culture. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir. So now I request our admin, Professor Pramod Kumar Das, to make his own observations. Well, sir, are you?
Namaskar.
Yes, sir. Yes, welcome, sir.
Am I audible, sir?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Thank you. So both the talks were beautiful and wonderful. The job of a philosophy is philosophical analysis on the one hand, and the other hand is realization of the truth. In Indian culture, we emphasize on the second criterion, that is the realization of truth. And another job of philosophy is philosophical analysis, because analysis is the method. If we do not, analysis is the job of philosophy. The first speaker emphasized upon the aspect of philosophical analysis. In order to defend philosophy as philosophical analysis, this is an attempt, this is an analytical attempt, epistemological attempt, an empirical attempt also to understand the metaphysics. How metaphysics, when metaphysics is challenged in Western lands, it is an attempt to understand and to explain metaphysics through an empirical tool, that is language. Because language is man-made. Language is man-made. It is a human tool. It is a convention. It has its own grammar. The grammar is conventional. We only human beings understand language. Language is not the nature. Language is human. So it is a human tool. In that sense, it is an empirical tool. It is an epistemological tool. And through that tool, we are trying to understand the metaphysics. The second speaker tried to explain the opposite. she applied metaphysics in empirical living. If one is cultured with Advaita, if one is groomed with harmony, sense of harmony, if one has wisdom of unity in diversity, he or she or that man can live a perfect life in the so much diversified situations. That means we can maintain, we can live with unity through different types of diversities. The second approach was that. My submission is, yes, as Professor Sir said, that this is only perspective, linguistic perspective to understand that metaphysics. But Advaita, even we should not restrict Advaita as metaphysical only. So in that sense, linguistic perspective is very much necessary to discuss. But this is an human attempt for human understanding. But Brahman is Brahman, whether human beings are able to understand it or fail to understand it. Brahman is Brahman. Nature is nature, sun is sun, whether sun is understood or misunderstood, sun is sun, ruta is ruta, dharma is dharma, whether it is understood or not understood. That aspect is missing in linguistic analysis. Linguistic analysis is only meant for understanding something. That something may be a stone, that something may be water, that something may be Brahman. It is only an attempt to understand. Those who do not understand. But realization of truth is something different. This is Atma Jnana. This is Atma. I am not a knower. So far as linguistic analysis is concerned, so far as epistemology is concerned, my identification is that, my identity is that I am a knower. But so far as when I am saying Aham Brahmasmi, this is my realization. Here I am not the knower. Here the knower is identified with the known. Here knowledge, known and knower are all integrally identified to each other. They are integral to each other. They are one. This is a matter of realization, which comes beyond the sphere of human intellection. Human intelligence. So man and Brahman, if they are two parties, Brahman will be understood and man will understand. There cannot be a bridge unless we have realization. This gap can be negotiated only through realization. It cannot be negotiated by the tools which is our own creation. We have created the tool and we are trying to play with that tool. Therefore, if we shall take linguistic analysis in the proper sense, every language has its own connotation. As Wittgenstein said, Professor Sir has done his research in both Sankara and Wittgenstein. Wittgenstein has said that language becomes meaningful when it is proper played. That is a game. We have to play with language. That means you have to use language in the appropriate situations, and by that the meaning of a language will be decided. That means the language of religion, language of science, language of other spheres, they are differently used to stand for different types of sciences, different fields of our inquiry or knowledge. Therefore, the language of a laboratory is not equal with the language of a great seer who is doing meditation under a tree, who has a realization of the truth, who has realized the relative truths. For a common man, I see that this is truth. But for a great seer, the same thing appears to be false. How can we negotiate this gap? It is a matter of realization. The same world appears to me illusory. The same world appears to an ordinary man as very much real. The perspective is also an illusion. But it is a good perspective. This is a defense against the claims that we Indian philosophers or our Indian philosophy lacks this technology, this methodology of linguistic analysis. So in that way, we defended Indian philosophy, that Indian philosophy also discusses linguistic analysis. There are so many systems who have emphasized on linguistic analysis, on grammar. That is available in our literature. That is well understood. But Westerners are not our competitors. They are not our competitors. We are not going to compete with anybody. My realization is my realization. There is nobody who will compete with my realization because it is very much personal to me. My wisdom is my wisdom. The wisdom of a seer is the wisdom of that person. It cannot be made by university wisdom. It cannot be made by webinars, seminars, discussions, linguistic analysis. It can be realized in silence, in proper realization. So this is another sphere of discussion. Therefore, language has its own connotation. Means when we are discussing the language of metaphysics, that should not be confused with the language of empirical world. Then it will be a category mistake. The grammar of the empirical language, or when we are discussing about the empirical world and the way we are describing it through a particular code of language, that language is different. But when we are discussing about something which is indescribable, which cannot be thought of, achintya, abhyakta, anirvarchanya, where language cannot meet, that language is something different. That language is called Mahavakya. Aham brahmasmi, tattvamasi, sarva khalu idam brahman. That is realization. That cannot be divided into subject-predicate dichotomy. But that is a laboratory. Suppose we shall bring Brahman to the scientific laboratory, then we can deal with the human tool of language. Otherwise, we can't discuss. But in that linguistic laboratory, we can never have the realization of oneness, that I am not the knower. There is no external world outside me. Everything is one. This is a matter of realization. This may be challenged by Westerners because they don't have that realization. They are not Indian. Therefore, they can't have. So they are not our competitors. But this is a good defense that in our shop, this commodity is available. We also deal with linguistic analysis. The second talk, that was just the opposite. She is trying to imply this wisdom of unity, oneness, harmony in this empirical world of diversities, so that man can live a perfect life. So man can transform from selfishness to selflessness, from egoistic nature to the universal nature, from Jivatma to Paramatma. That I see myself in everything and I see everything in myself. This is not only a realization. Madam said, this realization can be executed, can be lived in this practical life. Thank you. Thank you. But I enjoyed both the perspectives, the linguistic perspective, and the second one was the socio-human perspective or humanitarian perspective. I enjoyed both the talks. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Now, one sentence I would say to Professor Silvam, that as far as I remember, it was said by Bradley that the choice is not between metaphysics or no metaphysics. The choice is between good metaphysics and bad metaphysics. Walls might have quoted him, but this is the saying, and this was Bradley's appearance and reality. In that context, Bradley said somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Professor Das, and thanks for your observations. But as you say, that analytic method is relevant, but to a point it is relevant, as you said, that we have a language where anirvachaniya comes, where indescribability comes. A new set of language works, as you say. So you talked of the language of self-realization. So there also, when you say language of self-realization, it's a different language, it's a different format. So there also maybe I don't know. As you said, there is a different language. So why do we avoid it? Why shouldn't we explore that area? What is that language of self-realization? So how far what Paneerselvam sir has done, how far that concept would be relevant, or is that this language of self-realization far exceeds the analytic trend that we have in Western philosophy. So we have the Western current in us, and we do have a language of self-realization where there is, as you said, there is nowhere and known becomes one, and there is a total silence. Silence is the strongest language. How do you define language? So silence speaks volumes, as you said. So at that stage, when you say the nowhere, everything becomes one, that's a different set of language. It's a different sort of language. So we do have a language of self-realization, and that is silence. So that's how analytic philosophy can work there. So that's my understanding. Taking both all the positions together. So we do have analytic philosophers may end up to the empirical world, but we can take that language, the linguistic trend further, and we can see that silence as the trend that can be explained through this analytic logical philosophy. Thank you very much. So it's
I shall respond to it, Dr. Rao.
Yes, carry on, sir.
Dr. Rao, I shall respond to it. If there is any necessity that I shall speak to you and you will listen to me, if there will be a speaker and there will be a listener, then only language is required.
Not necessarily, sir. Not necessarily. I talk to myself.
What you are saying, I am saying. I am not saying.
I'm talking of the language of silence. I'm talking of the language of silence. I don't talk of the empirical knowledge, empirical language.
There is no language, sir. There is no language.
There is no requirement of the other. There is no requirement of the other. You speak inside.
I understood, sir. I am speaking something different. Please listen to me.
Carry on, sir. Carry on.
When we are making linguistic analysis, when we understand language as language, we try to put all types of expressions, all types of sentences, which appear to be grammatical, into one laboratory. That is philosophical analysis. That is the problem. When I am speaking that metaphysical language something different, that actually means that type of pronouncement, that type of sentences, expressions, which are pronounced by the great men of the great seers, that cannot be adequately analyzed in this manner. William James, the famous book, The Varieties of Experiences, speaks that our experiences are different. So our experience of the empirical world is different from our experience of the higher entity in which the very person is concerned. It cannot be communicated to others. That I am saying. Their language fails. It is not necessary to convince you about my realization, because my realization is my transformation. Whenever I need to explain to you through language, and I am using language, that is the relation between a teacher and student. Teacher knows what he knows, but when he is trying to communicate the truth to the student, the tool is language. Otherwise, he cannot teach. So their language is necessary, but for my realization, no language is necessary. Because language is our creation. Language is the creation of a society. So that analysis is good, but whenever we are discussing about metaphysical entities, that is a matter of realization, and we all have that realization. We are arguing because we are sitting on a chair and we are trying to defend a concept. No, we have to go beyond that. As a man, you ask to yourself, are you Dr. Rao? Are you really Dr. Rao? Are you really a professor? Yes, you are a professor and Dr. Rao by our necessities. Your parents have told you Dr. Rao, therefore you are Dr. Rao, but you are not Dr. Rao. If you are not a professor, you may be an engineer. So you are being a father, you are being a teacher, you are being everything. That is relatively true. But the ultimate truth that I am Brahman, I am I, that is a matter of realization that we all have, but we don't speak. We speak academically, that we are trying to put everything into language. So that limits us. So we have to go beyond language. We have to go beyond grammar. We have to go beyond conventions, beyond society, beyond divisions, beyond diversities, even beyond dialectics. That is my point. And we are really that. My identity is that. Your identity is that. Tattamasi, you are Brahman. It is not a matter of a mere very ordinary sentence. It appears to be grammatical. It is, yes, it's linguistic, but it is a matter of realization. A mother does not need any language to pacify the child. If the mother will touch the child remains silent. Only the touch of the mother is sufficient to make the child calm. Similarly, the touch of a great teacher, the very touch is sufficient to transform the wisdom from this mind to that mind. That is the parampara, Guru Sishya parampara. Their language is in, therefore neti neti. Therefore neti neti. That means not this, not this, not this, not this. Yes, it is an entertainment if we shall bring this type, this phenomena into linguistic pattern. That's good. That academically that looks beautiful. But so far as realization is concerned, I think realization is realization. And we all have that. And that is our real identity. Madam told, let us don't have only the wisdom of Advaita, let us live with that. Let us build the society like that. Let us build the nation like that. This is the point. So, in the linguistic perspective, we can analyze everything, and therefore we can analyze Advaita. In this syllogism, this is very much a very good attempt. It's a human attempt. 2 minutes. But so far the humanitarian standpoint, the madam spoke of humanitarian standpoint, that we should live with that wisdom, that we are all one. That is my submission.
Sir. Yes, sir.
Can I say something?
Sir, welcome, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Actually, there is some problem that I feel that I have not been properly understood by sir. What I was trying to say is that Indian philosophers, when they talk about the analysis, they use it in two different ways. Towards the end of my talk, I said, in Indian philosophical discourse, as it has been pointed out by many foreign thinkers like Howard and others, that in Indian philosophical tradition, language is used not only to convey the empirical truths, right? The same language, right? The same language is used in order to say something about the supersensuous reality. But that language also is a failure, no doubt. But that is the only way by which we can talk about Brahman. That is the reason why we have the Mahavakyas. So, without language, you cannot understand Brahman. I am not saying that the concept of Brahman has to be examined in a laboratory. No. I go beyond that. I say, even when you talk about, in the beginning also I pointed out that there can be a relation between Brahman and language. But with regard to empirical, I gave the example of a table or chair, wherein the empirical objects can be seen and verified and checked, and we can say this is knowledge. But with regard to Brahman, should we dismiss that? No, we need not dismiss that. We use a different methodology. That's why, as Professor Rao has also pointed out, that neti is used. And also I have used this method of Adhyaropa and Apavada. And also the Lakshanas are used. So wherever you go, in order to say metaphysical truths also, you need language. Without language, you cannot understand anything. But that language which I am using, which others have used, is a language which talks about the supersensuous reality. So that language cannot directly convey the knowledge of ultimate reality. It can point out, or it can show that Brahman is something which can be known. That is the reason why in Mundaka it is said, once you know Brahman, you become Brahman. So the stage which you are talking about is to become Brahman. But in order to become Brahman, you must know Brahman. So these are the categories of language you are using. But that also I said that category has a limitation, no doubt. But in order to say, I in fact quoted, remember, towards the end I quoted Professor K. Sachidanandamurthy, who said, in order to say something about Brahman, because we can't keep quiet. So some phrase or some terms are used. Their language ends. In fact, there is also another problem. There is an ontological leap which you are taking. I always use the word ontological leap. I have coined the word in order to talk about the leap that we take from the empirical to the transcendental. But that is very much essential because we are talking about the metaphysical truths. Metaphysical truths can be explained by language, but not in this ordinary form. There, I think Professor has not properly, paid attention to what I said. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Sir, it is already 9 o'clock, sir. The debate will continue. We can...
I shall speak only one sentence.
Okay, sir.
Language is our empirical necessity. That we agree. We have no problem with it. By language, I am a gentleman. By language, I am a teacher. By language, I am a father. So language, because of that empirical necessity, I have my empirical identity. We have no problem with that. But the thing I am, what I am speaking of, that is a matter of realization. And that is very much personal. Therefore, Shankaracharya, therefore Ramayana, that realization is very much personal. So language means that should be public. That should be only two persons. One is speaking, another person is listening. That is very there. But when
Thank you, Professor Das.
Can I have only one sentence? Can I have only...
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
See, once again, the problem persists. See, I can explain this by giving an example which is available in Advaita Siddhi. It goes like this. Somebody is asking the question, which is the moon? Then the answer that is given is, the most resplendent is the moon. Now here, the term, the most resplendent is the moon, is not definition or description. Language is a pointer to Brahman. Please note that. Language is a pointer to Brahman. So we are not describing anything. No doubt language is used for the empirical purposes or in the phenomenal world, that I agree. But the same language we are using in order to say something about their language becomes a failure. But in order to say something, we use that. In the case of the most resplendent is the moon, it is not the description. Now, for example, terms like Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Brahma is used. Now, the word Satyam does not, we cannot take the literal meaning of the word Satyam by saying that it refers to truth. In order to say that Brahman is different from Asatyam, the word Satyam is used. So, which means only by negative connotation you can understand and not a positive connotation. So, this means in a negative way you can understand Brahman through language. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Well, it was a great debate, and I do agree that what Professor Paneerselvam has pointed towards the last. Well, it is. Well, we do agree it is indescribable, but still, in order to understand the notion, we need language. So, before realizing the Brahman, we need a sort of language to describe the Brahman.
Right.
So Neti is the technique to approach Brahman. Well, we need language there. And what I could see is that even what Professor Das says, that I speak to myself, I understand, but that also I see we can develop analytic trend there also, the language of silence. We can develop a very good thesis, the language of silence. So what you're talking about, both the sides can be brought in together and very nicely be taken as a very good area for research. And I see this linguistic trend can work not only to this empirical standpoint that the Westerners see, we can extend what I could learn from this lecture, that we can extend by making a great ontological leap, as Professor Paneerselvam has said, that the matter of when you talk of self-realization, okay, so becoming one with the Brahman, we are making a great ontological leap. So even making that ontological leap, if at all there is a silence, that has a language. That is the language of silence, that is the language of self-realization. So this is what I could get from the discussion. Thank you, Professor Selvam, Professor Das, Professor B. Chandrika Madam, Professor Ranjit Ghosh sir. Thank you very much for making this evening so lively. I'm very much thankful to the speakers and all the question raisers. Thank you very much. Now over to Professor Kailas Chandra Mahana sir to carry on the further proceedings.
Okay, thanks so much, Professor Rao, for briefly moderating the intercession. And today I enjoyed the talk of Professor Paneerselvam, the way he discussed the logical linguistic analysis in order to communicate with the reality, to understand the reality, to understand Vedanta and Advaita and the fundamental problems of Indian philosophy. And today I can see a coherence and harmony between the talk of Professor Selvam and Professor Chandrika. And Professor Chandrika has taken that how we can establish that is peace and universal brotherhood and harmony in this one. And I think that is if if we have the linguistic clarity, if we have if we can use the tool of logical linguistic analysis, then by using the tool of logical linguistic analysis, we can also establish harmony, universal brotherhood in the world. Okay, thanks so much. Now over to Professor Pramod Kumar Das for the closure of the meeting.
So we thank everybody, both the speakers, Professor Ghosh, our Professor Chandrika, Professor Paneerselvam, Professor Ranjit Ghosh, Professor Pramod